Twilight, a Smut Retelling, from Bella's point of view, narrated by Iro Sensei. Chapter 1, Eclipsed in Silence. You moved to this quiet town because it felt like the only path left. The city had become too loud, too complicated, and your mother, restless and romantic, deserved to live without feeling tethered. So you stepped into the rain-soaked silence, into a town where time seemed slower and shadows had more than just the absence of light. The school felt like a ritual you had to endure, bland hallways, faces you'd never remember, until him. He was the kind of presence that made silence feel alive. He didn't try to stand out, he avoided it, but something about him seemed off, otherworldly. Pale skin that never flushed, eyes that seemed to change color, movements too smooth, too controlled. He sat across the room and barely looked at you, and yet, when your eyes met, it felt like an electric current jolted through your veins. At first, he avoided you like you were dangerous. He disappeared for days, only to return with forced calm and guarded stares. Then the questions began. What were you? How did your scent affect him so deeply? You hadn't even touched, yet it felt like your bodies had already memorized each other. The tension built slowly, sidelong glances, words unspoken. You learned he had secrets, dark ones, and that he was far from human. You should have run, but you didn't. You stayed, asked questions, let him reveal himself to you in pieces. He admitted the truth one night after school, voice low and pained. Something ancient lived inside him, a hunger he barely restrained. He told you he wanted you in ways that terrified him, not just your body, not even just your blood, but your essence, your surrender. You told him you weren't afraid, and that was when it truly began. The first kiss happened on a forest trail, a moment stolen between confessions. His lips were cool, hesitant, trembling with restraint. You clutched at his shirt, feeling the stone-like tension beneath, and whispered into his mouth that you didn't want him to hold back. The intimacy bloomed from there. Slowly, your touches grew bolder, your nights longer. You never slept. You found out he often watched you, only ever with reverence. He said he couldn't stay away, that you drew something from him he thought was long dead. One evening, in the quiet sanctuary of his home, the tension finally broke. He didn't undress you in a rush. His fingers moved as if opening something sacred. You felt your breath catch as he peeled away layers, first fabric, then hesitation. He kissed down your neck, each press of his lips an apology for wanting you this much. He made love to you like a man starved for a century. You cried out when he entered you, the stretch electric, the depth unbearable in its sweetness. His hands cradled your hips, steady even as his breath came ragged. You'd never seen someone so desperate to restrain himself for you. Every thrust was measured, but deeper, more intense, as you begged him to let go. And eventually, he did. He took you like the storm outside, wild, wind-lashed, elemental. The sound of your bodies filled the room, and your moans were met with his low, primal groans as pleasure overtook control. Afterward, you lay in his arms, your legs still wrapped around his waist, his breath ghosting along your collarbone. He confessed he hadn't felt anything like this throughout his long life, that if this was damnation, he'd go willingly. And you whispered the truth into his skin, that you didn't want salvation, not from him, not from this. You fell asleep with his fingers threaded through yours, knowing he would never leave your side again. Not because of obligation, but because your bodies had spoken what your hearts were too afraid to say. You belong to each other now, across lifetimes, across danger, across desire. Chapter 2, Where the Rain Fell. After your first night together, everything changed. Not all at once. The world still turned. School still rang with bells and hallways and passing glances. But beneath it all was this thread, this molten wire of connection between you and him, pulsing with every breath. He stayed each night now, not always in bed with you, sometimes just watching, a silent guardian perched in shadow. But more and more he allowed himself to touch you. You explored him the way one explores a forbidden library, slowly, reverently, and with a hunger that only deepened the more pages you turned. He had a century of restraint, but you chipped away at it, kiss by kiss. Your hands mapped the ridges of his body, learning how his breath caught when you whispered to him, how his hips bucked when your mouth found his throat. He was careful, always, but sometimes when you pressed your body against his and begged him not to hold back, he would break a little, and those moments were holy. One night, it was rain that undid him. You'd both slipped outside during a storm, barefoot, wild. You danced with him beneath the trees, your shirt clinging to you, water tracing your skin like a lover's fingertips. He pulled you to him then, soaked and shivering, and kissed you with a hunger so old it trembled. You took him right there in the forest, your back against a tree, his body pinning you to the bark. He lifted your leg, entered you slowly, and the rain swallowed your cries as he thrust again and again, until your moans blurred with the sound of thunder. He came inside you with a growl, forehead pressed to yours, both of you shaking. But joy doesn't last forever. Trouble comes like frost on new blossoms, quiet, unexpected, and relentless. Whispers of danger, eyes watching from the edges of your shared world. Other beings like him, but not like him, feral, ruthless. You knew he was growing more restless, more afraid, not of them, of himself. You started pulling away, not from your body, but from the promise of forever. He still touched you at night. He still buried his face between your thighs and drank your pleasure like it sustained him. But there was something behind his eyes now, a question he wouldn't ask. One morning, he didn't show. The next day, he was there, but distant. The way he kissed you felt like a goodbye you hadn't heard yet. And then, one quiet evening, he took your hand and led you into the woods. You followed, not because you trusted, but because you loved. I can't stay, he said, his voice hollow. You're not safe with me. You laughed, cold and broken. I'm not safe without you. But he stepped back, out of reach. I don't want you to come looking for me. I want you to live, to move on. The last thing you saw were his eyes, glowing, aching, and then the shadows swallowed him whole. You didn't scream, not at first. You just stood there, still holding out your hand, as if love alone could call him back. Chapter 3. Embers Between Silence. He left. There was no warning, no slow drift, just silence, cold, sudden, final. One moment his breath was on your skin, whispering of forever. The next you were alone in the forest, surrounded by damp earth and the hollow echo of your own heartbeat. He told you it was for your protection, that loving you put you in danger, that he had to go. But what he didn't say, and what you felt in your bones, was that he still loved you. The days blurred. You stopped counting them. Shadows became companions. Your bed grew cold, no longer scented with him. You would lie awake, fingers trailing your skin where his once traced you, remembering the way he entered you that night, how he held back, then lost himself, then held you afterwards like you couldn't believe he had got to exist inside you. Now you only had silence. Your body ached for him, but worse, your soul did too. You weren't prepared for the one who arrived next. He'd always been there, really, familiar, grounded, a friend you hadn't looked at long enough, but suddenly you did. He was nothing like the one who left. His hands were warm, rough from labor. His voice was laughter, not lament. Where the first was shadow and moonlight, this one was sunlight filtered through trees, steady, alive. He didn't ask for your pain, he just stood with you in it. And slowly, his touch became something more. The first kiss happened on your front porch, in the dusk where cicadas sang. His lips were hesitant, unsure, but your fingers found his jaw and pulled him closer. You didn't need the fire of immortality, you needed to feel something real. That night, when he followed you inside, you didn't turn on the lights. You led him to your bedroom, still carrying the scent of a ghost. But this man, he brought the now. He undressed you reverently, peeling your shirt away, kissing each inch of skin like it was new to him. His hands explored the curves and hollows the other had memorized, but he made them feel different, not sacred, but yours, alive. He whispered your name as he entered you, slowly, carefully. His hips cradled against yours like he feared breaking the moment. You moaned, soft at first, then louder, as he rolled his hips and filled you again and again. He didn't move like someone holding back a monster. He moved like a man who wanted you to forget sadness, even if only for a moment. You cried afterwards, not because it wasn't enough, but because part of you was still waiting for cold fingers to brush your cheek, for a familiar voice to call you back from the edge. He held you anyway, asked nothing, demanded nothing, just wrapped you in warmth until sleep took you. But even in dreams, the first one lingered, because love like that doesn't vanish. And when you awoke, tangled in another's arms, you still felt the pull, the ghost tether across distance, across worlds. You knew he still watched, still hurt, still burned. But for now, you were here, and you were learning how to feel again. Chapter 4, Between Two Fires. You never meant to fall for him, not the one who left, the other, the one who stayed. The man with heat in his hands and sunlight in his skin. He had been there when you were broken, when your bed felt too big and your silence too loud. He didn't try to fix you, he just held you. There were nights when you woke from dreams of a cold kiss and turned instead into the warmth of his chest, your fingers curling in his hair, your lips finding his shoulder. His touch was always gentle, but it knew how to ignite. He knew your sounds, your moods, your body. He didn't flinch when you whispered another's name in your sleep. He kissed you anyway. You made love to him, not with the fire that had once consumed you, but with something slower, sweeter, healing. You came with his name on your lips, and afterwards you wept into his arms, and he said nothing except, "I'm here." But he knew he didn't own your heart entirely. The ghost of the one who left lingered like mist. Sometimes, when you walked alone, you swore you saw movement between the trees. You turn, heart racing, lips parted, only to find the wind. But the dreams grew sharper. You'd wake panting, thighs slick, the sensation of strong hands and breathless hunger still clinging to your skin. He was coming back to you, not in body, but in memory, in longing, in the soft ache you carried like a wound too deep to heal. And the man beside you felt it. He never said the name, but you saw it in his eyes, that awareness, that dread. He knew you were slipping. One night, after a slow kiss and a slow climb onto him, he held your hips still mid-thrust and whispered, "If you need to go, I won't stop you." You tried to speak, but the words caught in your throat. So instead, you rode him harder, took him deeper, tried to bury your confusion in the way he made your body sing. You both came afterwards, tangled and sweating, but the silence afterwards felt heavy. The next day, you saw him. Not the man in your bed, him, your ghost. He stepped out from the shadows of the trees like no time had passed, still perfect, still dangerous. His eyes met yours, and you felt everything inside you collapse and reform in a single heartbeat. You wanted to run, to scream, to kiss him until your lungs failed, but all you said was, "Why now?" He didn't answer. He just stepped closer, and you knew everything was about to break again. Chapter 5, The Return and the Reckoning. You saw him in the mist, like a dream refusing to fade. You were walking through the woods alone, more out of habit than purpose. The forest had become your solace, wet earth, soft moss, branches like ribs arching above, and then there he was, stillness incarnate, pale, breathless, his golden eyes burning through you like time hadn't passed at all. The silence cracked between you. "I shouldn't have left, but I thought it would save you," he said, voice ragged like torn silk. You swallowed your heartbeat, feeling it echo everywhere, your chest, your throat, your thighs. You wanted to scream at him, strike him, collapse into him. Instead, you said, "You broke me." And still, you took a step forward. The reunion was slow, hesitant. He did not try to reclaim what he'd lost. He'd hovered, always watching, always careful, like you were a glass holding a storm. He didn't speak of the man who'd warmed your bed in his absence, the one whose hands had steadied your grief. But he knew. You saw it in the way he touched you now, as if competing with a ghost that had filled your place. Tension grew. You were torn between fire and ice. One man who taught you how to survive, and another who made you question if you ever really lived before him. And then, one night, he couldn't hold back anymore. He stood at the edge of your bed, eyes wild with pain and possession, and said, "Tell me to go, and I will." You didn't. You reached for him instead. He was on you before breath could catch, mouth claiming yours with a ferocity born of years buried in control. His hands found your waist, your breasts, your throat, holding you like something both worshipped and conquered. You ripped at his shirt. You wanted to feel all of him, cold, perfect, desperate. When he laid you back on the sheets, he didn't ask for your permission. He knew your body too well, knew where to bite your lip, how to slide his tongue against your skin like silk on marble. You were already wet by the time he pulled your panties down with trembling fingers. He entered you like he had something to prove. It wasn't gentle, it wasn't slow, it was need. You clutched his back, your nails digging into flesh that never bruised. He buried himself deeper with each thrust, your cries swallowed in the heat of his kisses. You screamed his name when you came, and he growled into your neck as you followed, shaking with restraint and fury and hunger finally unchained. You lay tangled afterwards, his fingers brushing your jaw, your thighs still parted, the room thick with the scent of sweat and sex. Neither of you spoke of what it meant, not yet, but in that moment you belonged to him again, and he to you, even if the world still waited for your choice. Chapter 6. The Path to Forever. Choosing him didn't feel like a single moment. It felt like erosion, slow, inevitable, painful. After he returned, the air changed. Everything around you, touch, sound, light, felt heightened, like the world had exhaled and now waited, breath held, to see what you would do. You didn't leave the warmth right away. The man who'd held you through your grief didn't demand it. He watched as you faltered, kissed you when you needed grounding, took you in his arms one last time, your back arching beneath him, your moans trembling with confusion and guilt. And afterwards, when you cried against his chest, he whispered, "You love him more." You nodded, throat tight. That night, you walked barefoot through the trees, tears hot against your cheeks, and found the one who'd broken you and still held you. He didn't speak, he just opened his arms. You fell into them. What followed wasn't peace, not right away. There was tension. Time had changed both of you. He no longer touched you like you were fragile, and you no longer waited to be chosen. You took what you wanted. You kissed him like possession, bit his lip, pushed him against walls and straddled him, pulling him free and sliding onto him with a growl. You let your anger mix with lust, and he took it all, moaning into your mouth, thrusting harder, deeper, until both of you came shaking, feral, marked. He whispered, "I'll never leave you again." And this time, he didn't. You began to speak of forever, not just words, but plans, a joining, a ceremony, a vow etched not just in spirit, but in skin and eternity. There were arguments, of course, warnings from others like him, dangers unspoken, risks of turning, of what might happen to your body, your soul. Even he hesitated, though he tried to hide it. But you saw through him, you always had. And when you pressed your lips to his, whispering that you'd rather die than be without him, he understood. You didn't belong to the world anymore, you belonged to each other. You spent your last nights as a human wrapped in his arms, savoring every flicker of mortality. You made love with the desperate sweetness of goodbye, his mouth slow, his fingers gentle, your legs wrapped tightly around his waist as you whispered his name into the hollow of his throat. He kissed your chest, your belly, your thighs, as if memorizing the version of you that would soon be gone. And you let him. You knew the fire would come, but first there'd be vows, a union, a night that wouldn't end. You were ready. Chapter 7. The Immortal Vow. You said yes with a voice steady and soft, but your body trembled. The ceremony was a blur of flowers, murmurs, the flicker of candlelight on polished glass. You barely remembered the words, only the way he looked at you, like you were already his eternity. And then came the night. The house was silent when he carried you across the threshold. He set you down with a reverence that felt ancient, as though his hands had waited a century just for this moment. The bedroom shimmered with moonlight and shadow. You undressed slowly, not out of modesty, but ceremony. Each layer fell away like a lifetime shed. When he touched you, it was different. No more restraint, no more fear, only hunger. He kissed you like he was claiming territory, like your skin had become sacred ground. You gasped as he pressed you into the sheets, his mouth trailing from your throat to your breasts, to the slick heat already pulsing between your thighs. This was not just sex, this was completion. When he entered you, you cried out from the overwhelming truth of it that this is what you were made for. His thrusts were slow at first, deliberate, then deeper, harder, as your fingers clawed down his back and your hips rose to meet him. You didn't just come, you shattered, over and over, until your throat was hoarse and his name tasted like prayer on your tongue. You slept in fragments that night, and when morning came, so did the change. The transformation was pain and fire, but not just that, it was surrender, it was rebirth. You remembered your body breaking, your heart racing to an impossible rhythm, and then stillness, awareness, power. When you opened your eyes, the world looked different, sharper, more vibrant. Your lover stood before you, no longer shadow, no longer mystery, just yours entirely. And when you touched him this time, your first touch as something new, it wasn't gentle, it was possessive, eager, divine. You took him against the wall, against the cold stone that had once been a boundary. His moans echoed with yours as you fucked him not like a woman, but like a goddess finally given her body. Your strength matched his, your speed, your desire. The sheets tore, the bed cracked, the world narrowed to only skin, teeth, sweat, the pounding, perfect rhythm of two immortals fused. And when you came this time, it wasn't shattering, it was rising, endless, consuming, eternal. Chapter 8. The Flame Without End. The world felt different now, not brighter, not louder, sharper. Every movement, every breath, every heartbeat in the world around you played like music, layered, precise, rich. Your body felt weightless, but strong. Your skin velvet over iron. Your eyes blazing with color no human could name. And your hunger, for him, was infinite. He watched you with reverence that bordered on worship, yet held the caution of a man standing too close to flame. You're stronger than I was, more controlled, he whispered, brushing a hand down your bare arm. You tested it. You kissed him with hunger, and he didn't flinch. You pushed him to the bed, and he let you. You straddled him, ripped open his shirt, and sank your teeth gently into his neck, licking the spot afterward as he gasped. Your strength terrified you, but only in the way power should, like standing on the edge of a cliff and knowing you can fly. And when you fucked him now, you weren't afraid. You took him with the grace of a goddess, rode him harder, faster, until the bed cracked beneath you and his hands bruised your hips in a way that only thrilled you. You growled his name, hair wild, eyes golden, thighs shaking as your climax surged through you like a tidal wave of fire. He came with you, raw, trembling, undone. You collapsed on top of him, laughing through breathless kisses, and murmured, "I like being immortal." "You wear it well," he whispered, tracing lazy circles on your back. The days blurred, your senses adjusted, your strength became familiar. You hunted with elegance, your body cutting through the forest like wind through silk. You returned each time to his arms, your skin scented with earth and blood and desire. But with the pleasure came responsibility. Others began to notice you, strangers with eyes that glinted with questions. Power attracts power, and you were no longer hidden. Together, you trained, fought, fucked, loved. Every night was different, sometimes soft, his tongue dancing over your skin like a spell, sometimes wild, him pinning you to the wall, your moans echoing into the empty night. But every time it ended with you tangled, wrapped around each other, tasting eternity on your tongues. And always, he whispered, forever. Chapter 9. The Lovers Beyond Time. Time no longer passed for you, it expanded. Days became years in a glance, and yet your desire for him didn't fade, it deepened. Your body had been remade, but your soul still knew his touch like scripture. You still gasped when his lips grazed your spine, still ached when his voice dropped low and called you his. But eternity is never idle. You began to travel, first through forests thick with silence, then cities that pulsed like blood through the world's veins. You hunted only what you must, but more than that, you learned about others like you, about those unlike anything you'd encountered before. One night, in a forgotten part of the world, you found them, creatures older than legend, neither vampire nor human, bound to no rules but their own. They watched you with curiosity, some with hunger. You stood tall beside your lover, your hand in his, and when one of them dared to challenge your right to this world, you showed them, with your body, with your power. And later, alone in the temple ruins, your body still singing, you fucked him against stone worn smooth by centuries of wind. His hands on your throat, your legs wrapped around his hips, your back arching as you took him deeper than you ever had before. You screamed into the stars as he came inside you, clutching your hips like they were the only truth left. You didn't just love him anymore, you owned him, as he did you. Immortality was not stillness, it was motion. It was hunger refined, not extinguished. You began to shape your own myth. You returned to those ruins, again and again, not just to hunt, to teach, to rule. Whispers spread of a pair, immortal lovers, unstoppable in battle, insatiable in bed. You didn't deny the rumors. You wore them like silk. One night, you stood beside him, overlooking a sea of flame-lit faces, others like you, drawn by legend, by awe. You turned to him and said, "They look to us now." He smiled, brushing a kiss to your knuckles. "Then let's show them what love becomes when it's eternal." And that night, you did, in the center of that temple, on an altar never meant for anything sacred. You rode him while they watched, an act of worship, of defiance, of truth. You weren't just in love, you had become their gods.